Project 2, Task 3 has two parts, an A and a B. An A requires you to develop a document that you will submit, which will be part of your post-observation debriefing to your assessor. Part B requires you to role play the post-observation debriefing with the assessor. So in this instance, you would start with obviously 3A and make some summary notes in the template that we've provided to help you or guide you through that briefing that you'll undertake with your assessor as part of 3B. If you're attending a face-to-face session here at Foresight's Training, you will role play that with your assessor, Foresight's Training assessor, observing you. You'll role play it with one of your peers during your training. If you're unable to attend on that day, or you're doing this part of the course via distance, then you will need to role play this with somebody back in your workplace, an adult who plays the role of Sam, as you debrief him on the observations that you've undertaken with Billy, Joanne and Jack, following the document that you developed for Task 3A. So let's have a look at Task 3A, because that's going to guide you through Part B, that observation role play that you have to undertake. Once you've observed and completed the observation of Billy, Joanne and Jack, you meet with Sam, the qualified assessor, to brief him on all three observations simultaneously, informing Sam of your recommendations for each of those participants. One of your peers will play the role of Sam, as I mentioned, with your Foresight's Training assessor will observe your role play with your peers, which is why you'll need to send in video submission if you're unable to attend a face-to-face session. So let's have a look at the document that you actually need to complete for this. And again, the template needs to be fully filled in to lead to a satisfactory outcome. So in here, you will outline how the principles of assessment were met. Remembering the principles of assessment are really important in your role, whether you're an observer or an assessor, because all assessments must meet the principles of assessment being valid, reliable, flexible and fair. So in here, you would actually document how you made sure that the assessment was valid, reliable, flexible and fair. How the rules of evidence were met. How did you ensure that the evidence that you were collecting met the rules of evidence so that Sam, the qualified assessor, can make a judgment without having to go back and reassess any components that maybe hadn't been met in the rules of evidence? So you would need to put a little summary in here on how you made sure that the observation you played a role in was valid, sufficient, current and authentic. Following that, you'll put a summary in here of the assessment outcomes. You might say Billy answered all the knowledge questions correctly. You followed the marking guide to ensure that they were correct responses, and you'd recommend that he has a satisfactory outcome for that part of the assessment. You might say in the performance evidence that while he performed 2 trolley lifts, only one of them actually met all the criteria, and he didn't wear the correct PPE on the second occasion, meaning that he would need to be reassessed, say for instance. So you're basically briefing Sam on what you saw and backing that up by the notes that you've undertaken and submitted for part of Project 2, Task 2. Right down the bottom of this nice simple little document, you also need to put how you might have sought and documented feedback from others involved in the assessment. You might have gone back and talked to somebody else and gone, you know what, he wore most of the PPE, but I can't be sure that those gloves were correct. You might have spoken to a technical expert or a supervisor or somebody else who's actually done these observations. So you might have got a little bit of feedback or undertaken what we call a bit of moderation to help you make a decision. Areas for improvement in collecting evidence for future assessments. Now that you've used the documents, you've watched the videos, you've listened to Billy, Joanne, and you've read what Jack submitted, what kinds of areas for improvement would you select or recommend for future assessments being undertaken in this same manner? There's always some kind of area for improvement, so please don't put NA. We hope these tips have helped you again, and we look forward to receiving your submission.